Hello, good morning. Good morning, Oana. Good morning, Joachim. I'm very happy to relaunch the meetings, the online meetings with this meeting about Timișoara, European Cultural Capital. And we are still waiting for Julien Chiappone-Lucchesi. So we are here with Oana Simionescu from FABER, with Joachim Umlauf from the Goethe-Institut Bucuresti, and we are waiting for Julien Chiappone-Lucchesi from the French Institute. I decided that we do this discussion, and we will have at the end of it also a small part, because we are in direct live on Facebook, but I also have a tape with some thoughts of Tilla Rudel, who is the director of the French Institute in Timișoara, and who also was an active part of Timișoara European Capital of Culture. I'll start immediately just by asking both of you, how do you feel now, after 6 months since 2023? And maybe Oana will be the first one to talk, because Joachim was a supporter, a connector, a very, very active part in some of the projects of the European Cultural Capital, and probably until in a couple of moments, Julien will also enter the online salon. So maybe both of you and Julien will then speak a little bit about what's the future of 𝗦𝗹𝑚𝑒𝑚𝑒, the EUNIC project, but also how you feel the capital had an importance in what's happening now, both in Timișoara and generally in cultural exchange, in cultural exchange in Romania. So, Oana Simionescu.
Good morning. So, first of all, after 6 months of a bit of a relief after the extremely dense 2023, I feel that things are starting to rebrew, or to get rearranged, restructured, rethought. I think many of us in Timișoara are thinking at how we can reimagine our future content and also structures in a context where basically we're in the tail of a very important event for this city, a moment where we had a lot of attention at both the national and European scale. And we are entering a time where we won't get the same attention, we won't get the same funding, and we will probably won't get the same political support that we got for 2023. But I think what we gained in 2023 is much more trust in each other and in our own capacities. And I think this is extremely valuable for the future on 2 scales. First of all, on the grassroots scale. And by this, I mean that all of us, the cultural operators from the city, I think since we are all reconsidering, or many of us are reconsidering what it would be good to do further, it's also a moment where we can rearrange our groups, our alliances, our intentions for the future, our common intentions for the future. So I think the next months and the next years, if we want to keep growing, to keep developing, it's important that we consider how we work together in a very structured and serious manner. And on another level, I think one of the greatest legacies of the Capital of Culture is, of course, the Center for Projects, which was a great success for Timișoara for last year. And I'm really happy to see that from there, there is a strong interest in developing public policies or to reimagine the cultural strategy for Timișoara for the next years. So I think this is also a very important line of action that comes as a very healthy legacy of the Capital for Culture project. And I see a very important possibility of collaboration between these two levels. So if we manage to get together in a coherent and structured way, us as operators, as a cultural sector, and get into a structured dialogue with the Center for Projects in this moment where they are developing the policies for the next years in Timișoara, I think this could be a fantastic restart for the environment here.
But Oana, did you, I mean, if I were to ask you, because you are running now and you're programming this very, very big space that is very original, in fact, in Romania, which is FABER, where you can do events, you can do exhibitions, you have spaces for conferences, you have also laboratory for thinking new ideas and innovation, etc. Do you, for example, think that in a certain way, let's say, did audiences change? Did something change in the way that audiences are reacting to cultural events? That's one thing. In terms of the cultural operators, you said that you have to build trust. Okay, but what was the element that determined this kind of change in building trust? And last but not least, because Timișoara was European Capital of Culture, and because Timișoara is really at the crossroads between a number of countries, in a way, like, it's a frontier, and in the same way, it's an intersection. And because Europe today is under the very, very powerful wave of nationalistic movements, and the European project, which was based on values of tolerance and cooperation, seems to be menaced by very concrete movements. How do you see Timișoara in terms of cultural exchange become a hub and a place where these kind of cultural events can encourage a different perspective about culture and about the importance to be European? I know it's a tough question, but how do you see this?
So first of all, I think the Capital of Culture gave us all a common mission. And I think this was fundamental in changing perspective on both the city and other players. And I think this happened both within the sector, which helped a lot to collaborate more, to trust your peers more. We saw we have a common mission. I think this was fundamental. And then this common mission, I think it also sparked a lot of curiosity within the city inhabitants. The energy that you could feel on Timișoara street during the year of the Capital of Culture was really electrifying. I was so proud to see that happening. So in terms of the behavior of the audiences, I think what happened last year was quite fantastic and unique. My hope is that by opening some doors to some people who usually don't come to events, we actually gained last year a much bigger audience for culture. So I think there is a challenge now to keep that spark alive with what we do. On the other hand, of course, the changes at the European and also global level, also in terms of politics, climate change, economy, war, all of that, of course, it also has an impact here. Right? I mean, it's unavoidable. And from this perspective, I think culture is always at the front line. It immediately suffers in this type of context. And I can say that we are also feeling that. For example, what's happening now in the music sector, I think is a consequence of this on one hand, but also on the rapid development of the entire entertainment industry, where you have a lot of development in working with digital experiences. I mean, the experience that entertainment industry can provide now has developed a lot, and this is starting to create a bit of a distance between the new formats and the audience they can attract and the classical formats that we are used to produce. So I think when we talk about connecting ourselves to Europe, I think it has a two level. One, it's at the level of values, which is always, I mean, the fact that we are in Europe is also always such a fantastic opportunity to learn from peers that are at very stages of development with very diverse experience, and it's very enriching. But at the same level, I think today we also have this layer of technology that has a really big impact on everything that we do.
Right. So you're not at all, in a way, you're not worried. You're just you just take it as a challenge. You take
Exactly.
you are taking all this as a challenge. So bonjour, Julien. We are now also with Julien, who joined us for the salon. I was just introducing all of you already. I just introduced you already, and was discussing with Oana Simionescu what was the real legacy of the cultural capital for a place like Faber, and how does she see today ways in which this legacy is going to be preserved. Now, my question for both Joachim and you is in relation, first of all, of this center, European center that you opened under the umbrella of EUNIC, but also I am very curious how each of you sees the development that occurred in Timișoara in relation to cultural cooperation, because each of you had different experiences. And I was mentioning also, Julien, that at the end of our conversation, in about 40 minutes, Tilla Rudel is going to have also an intervention that was already taped a couple of days before because she was not available. And so please, let's start with Hey, and then tell me a little bit more about each of your experiences today with Timișoara. Maybe I will start with Joachim.
Thanks a lot. Hi, Julien. Donc, I'm glad that you're here to add what has to be added, what I will forget to say. I wanted to make 2 points. The first now, maybe the second one later, dear Corina. The first about Hey, about Timișoara, and the second one maybe about this question, how far national cultures, institutes of culture are more and more doing a European work. So this maybe it's a more general question, but I would like to talk about a little bit later. Concerning Timișoara, it is, I think you're completely right. The most important question is, what is the legacy? Because, yeah, this was a fantastic year, but it's a year, and once it's over, one has to ask this question, what next? What's coming? What's going on? And it was quite difficult for Timișoara because I experienced some European capitals of culture. As you know, I was in Marseille, for instance, in 2013. I come back today from Sibiu, from the opening of the theater festival, and I could see how wonderful this legacy, for instance, in Sibiu FITS is still doing today, which transformed, I suppose, the whole city. If I think at Marseille, it's also very, very clear that there are some buildings left, like the museum, but also the image of the city is completely changed since the last 12 years. When I speak with people going to pass some days in Marseille, they they are already going there enthusiastic, and they are also coming back enthusiastic. So one has to ask this question, and I'm glad, Oana, that you mentioned the Centro de Proiecte, because Timișoara does not have this building or this festival, which is the legacy of this year. So if it is possible to build up and to maintain this Centro de Proiecte and this form of dialogue between the cultural actors, this would be a really good legacy. And the other part for us, which is really great, because we experienced the House of European Institutes last year with the help of many colleagues from different countries, naturally Julien, l'Institut Français, but also, and for all, I think there was a small group of really a core group of institutes, and I have to mention beyond the Institut Français and Goethe-Institut, the Polish Institute and the British Council, who were really these four institutes being more than the others involved in the application of the European House of European Institutes. And one has to underline, because you might not to know, this was the first time worldwide that such initiatives took place in the framework of the European Capital of Culture. So this is really, it's something special, something great. And what is for all great also for us, that we can continue this year still for 6 months. We have the same space in the Bastion. We have always activities taking place. All the European Cultural Institute, this network called EUNIC in Bucharest, is taking part of it. And yes, the big question is, will this place be a place which will be conserved also later on? Can we make out of it a kind of European Culture Institute, which is where it is not every 6 months necessary to make applications, but to have a more longer perspective for this. And this would be naturally our big wish. And I just can, before I give the floor to Julien, I can just assure you, last week we had in Bucharest the big EUNIC global meeting. That means that all the presidents and general secretaries and chiefs from the cultural institutes, from the head offices, came here to Bucharest, because it is the president of the Cultural Institute of Romania who took over the presidency for the 6 months, that they were really admiring our initiatives, which in this kind didn't take place in any other country. And maybe, as I said, later on, I will come back to this question of European perspective of national cultural institutes. But maybe Julien wants to add things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joachim. Just, I think it is important to detail two things regarding what you said, Joachim. The first one is that the Centrul de Proiecte is in fact something that Timișoara did not have before. Some other cities do have. For example, Bucarest has a lot of municipal cultural centers giving money and offering support to cultural organization. Arad has one, Cluj has one. So basically the fact that Timișoara became a European cultural capital offered the opportunity finally in Timișoara to this type of institution to be created. And it was not created for the capital. It was created because of the capital, but of course it was created in a sense of sustainability. It was never said that it will end the moment when the capital will change. And also in regard to the RCI presidency of EUNIC, maybe it is important also, Joachim, to say that these presidencies are kind of in a rotative way. I mean, each country has the right to be president at the moment. So it's not really a sort of a vote of people who vote for a president for many, many years. It's just a way in which each country has a say to design what the programs of EUNIC are going to be for a certain period of time as a president.
Exactly, because if I may add, you are completely right, Corina, what you say, but it's also important to say, in behalf of this European Network of Cultural Institute, we don't distinguish between big and small players, and we consider that everybody, so
Absolutely.
also coming from a so-called smaller cultural foreign institute has the right, as you said, as it is also the case in Europe, between the European countries and the presidency, to have once the presidency for 1 year.
Exactly, and we already had Horia Roman Patapietrevich,
yes, exactly,
was president at the moment, and now it's 𝗦𝗶𝘀𝘂𝗹𝑤𝑚. Julien.
Bonjour, bună ziua, hello. I'm sorry that I came a bit late to this conversation, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you. I like your slogan very much. I didn't take time for life, but for an urgent work. I would like to answer your question, dear Corina, about legacy. I think about, hey, Joachim had said already a lot. I would just maybe add a small element. But I totally agree with what said before. Legacy is what makes the importance of being designated and working towards an ECOC. No, it is probably a very tricky thing, the legacy, because it's not very precise. If you look at what is, and I'm just reading European Capital of Culture, the action is very clear, bringing Europeans closer together by highlighting the richness and diversity of European cultures and promoting greater mutual acquaintance between Union citizens. So that's a very clear program, but also very large. And when I say it's tricky for the heritage, because the heritage cannot be the same in all the diversity of the cities. Liverpool is not the same than Elefsina, and Timișoara is not the same as Marseille.
Yeah.
And it's very important to be able to say there is a common ground, but there is different ways and there is different kind of legacy. I would like to list different kind of legacy also that I think are very important. We don't have to say infrastructure is the only thing, but it's important, of course, to invest in infrastructure. And it's true, if I take again the example of Marseille, MUSEM, so this Museum of Mediterranean Culture and Civilization, is one, without a doubt, the legacy of Marseille 2013, and it is a very big infrastructure, and it has changed in a way a lot around Marseille. But you don't need to have this only. You have to have a long-term European development, long-term urban development idea that comes also with culture. I think also in smaller cities, maybe in all cities, it depends what ground was before. If your city was already very cultural, maybe it doesn't count that much. But if your city didn't have governance, didn't have a lot of money invested in culture, etc., the spirit that you reach through the capital, and then the well-being of stakeholders, but also of the people that would be proud of their legacy, of the legacy of the ECOC, is also very important. And probably in cities when this was not very much present before the capital, this legacy of I am proud of the cultural strength of my city as a citizen is super important. And I think that the participation tools that can be used during the capital are also very, very important to reach this outcome and should be continued. In the case of Timișoara, I'm very sure and observed that it was included in the candidacy, and probably it can continue to be done because it needs to be very implemented. And this capacity of participation is also different from a country to another. I was in Strasbourg before coming to Bucharest, and in Strasbourg, the participation, like in other cities in Europe, is already a kind of habit.
Yeah.
And in other cities, it is not. So you have to continue to build on it. It's also linked, this dialogue with the population, but the dialogue between stakeholders is also linked with the interest on the political level. The legacy should be also the interest on the political level to say, no, we are not the same as we were before, and we have a responsibility to continue, which is also a commitment that you do. Again, if you have a commitment to become a capital city, it's a commitment before, during, after, and it's over 10 years. For sure. So it is a commitment on a political level. And maybe also the last thing, it would be you said about the governance. It's probably very tricky also this, but you need to invest in a governance that take this cultural legacy in account more than before, and to take the responsibility to empower this governance body to make it more part of the overall policy, urban policy that you will implement after the European capital. And you have to, last thing, to really make it European and international. So there is networks that you have to invest, and those networks that are to invest formally, but they have to be invested with heart and with a dynamic that make the strong visibility effect that you gain through the capital an asset that you are cultivating. And for us to be in Timisoara with this innovative, this creativity that we wanted to bring also from our part, it's also bringing the network of EUNIC into the capital city. And I think that's also something that we want to build on, like a legacy for our own, and maybe a level of discussion with other clusters in Europe to make it not only a Timisoara experience, but something that can evolve and that can be proposed to other cities that will be European capital.
Yes, that's absolutely important, Julien. Thank you so much for having prepared this kind of very broad, very holistic explanation about what could be the importance of both the presence of Hey and the follow-up of the cultural capital for the whole city and in relation to culture and the city's development, etc. And now, before we come back, Joachim, to the European dimension, and all of you, I would like to say two things. First, and ask you, the three of you, a question. First of all, luckily, because we had elections, the mayor of Timisoara is still Dominic Fritz. And also, I would say, one thing that we did not speak enough, Oana, about is that the public authority, the local public authority in Timisoara understood how important and how strategic culture is also for the economic and social development of the city. But my question starts with this. There was an inquiry done by a Romanian sociological platform called 𝗬𝗬𝗓, and there were two articles that were pointing out the fact that despite the big success that the cultural capital had, there are parts in the periphery of Timisoara and audiences and publics in Timisoara that could not take advantage of the presence of the cultural capital. And because now I'm coming from Cluj, where at Transylvania International Film Festival, the film that got the Francophone award by a jury composed of young people, Francophone young people who give this award, and that film called Amal is about a place, a high school in Belgium, where, despite the fact that children live and young children live in a profoundly democratic society, finally they can be radicalized because the whole environment where they live in does not allow them to develop a sense and a mentality of democratic values, even if they are born in a democratic country. So I would like to hear your take on the fact that indeed there still is this disbalance between center and periphery, between the way in which, yes, all culture happens in a certain place, but it has to touch audiences and publics which are not already clients. Let's use this kind of corporatist term. How do you touch and how do you really impact on those communities that are not close to the center? Did, from this point of view, in your opinion, did the cultural capital offer an incentive? Is this a preoccupation today, for example, for the groups of organizations that you are part of, Oana? So, Oana, let's start with you, and then I'll invite Julien and Joachim.
I think this is indeed a very hard and real issue. And I believe that also, as Julien was mentioning before, these kind of changes take years to happen. I am extremely happy to see that last year, during the Capital of Culture, there was a great attention given to this topic, but it was just a beginning. There was also, from the requirements that we received as cultural operators from the funding authorities, you could see there a lot that there was a very specific and direct request from the funding authority that the cultural operator address this issue. But again, this is something that is quite new, that has happened really sporadically during the past year through the very specific interest of specific cultural organizations that are looking into this problem as their mission. But now what I can see is that this kind of policy, where you are being careful towards your entire city, not just towards the center, is something that will be transformed into public policy. I'm quite sure of this. As I am also quite sure that our very own attention is more sensitive to this topic. Yeah. FABER is a cultural center that is not situated in the core of the city. We are also a bit at the periphery. So I understand very well what that means in a city like Timișoara. The behavior of the citizens in such a city is, of course, to consume the center more. It's difficult to bring them toward the more peripheric area, which is understandable from many points of view. And I think that in order to change this behavior and to, again, spark curiosity towards exploring other areas in the first place, but also to give them the availability, like the mental availability to work with culture, I think this is a very long-term process that we need to be committed to, and it needs to be part of public policy. It's not enough that we take this responsibility, which again, I saw that many of us did take it. Another important legacy of last year, I think, is the the general attitude towards mediation programs, for example.
Absolutely.
Mediation teams were formed last year. Hundreds of wonderful mediators were taking care of the cultural content and transmitting it to diverse audiences in several types of languages and formats, also making the content accessible to people with disabilities and so forth. So I think we just entered into this topic, and it's something that we really need to be perseverant on. And I also wanted to make another note on Joachim's observation about FITS, for example, which is now just opening in Sibiu. I think our challenge is that we don't have one FITS. In Timișoara, we have so many fantastic big events. Well, from art encounters to Beta, Ieța Gallery, 𝗬𝑤𝑚𝑒𝑐, the film festival, the Simultan, Campus Creativ, really, hey, also, of course, really many fantastic projects that have the capacity or the potential to grow in a really significant way. And I think the challenge now is, as I also mentioned before, is that we are entering in a bit of a shadow of, in a cone of shadow after this 2023 cone of light, which we experienced. And we are entering a time where, even though the public administration understood the value of culture, it will be difficult to fund it at the same level. So the main topic, I think, in Timișoara in the next 2 years will be what alliances we can form in order to grow and not, let's say, stay in this shadow in this cone of shadow.
Right. Thank you, Oana. Joachim.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. This is first my remark for Oana, and maybe also a question, because when we think what is the legacy, you talked about the different things which might exist in Timișoara, but I think one of the legacies should be also, because Timișoara is in a place where many countries come together. So it's not only about the minorities being there in Timișoara, but it's also about Serbia, about Bulgaria, and so on. And I think, and this is also already in this perspective of Europe, it's a real challenge also to maintain this international perspective, to bring people together, to try to stimulate the intercultural dialogue. This would be one thing I'm really interested in, how, if there is a strategy to do it. Anyway, and this is also a little bit the question Corina asked, hey, has this year, one of the main topics is inclusion. Inclusion in a very large sense, naturally. This means inclusion from people having handicap, but also inclusion from people we didn't reach for the time being. And this reach people from other groups is very, very difficult, because there's one border which is there, this is money. So, for instance, if you ask me, how do we act, how do we try to enlarge our activities, let's say to rural zones or to other groups, it's all about also manpower and money. And normally it's for cultural institute of our size, so to say, it is really, really difficult to enlarge. But it remains a constant, a very important point. Yeah, and one point, and this is a very good thing to deal with this in Romania, is about minorities. We have many projects with minorities. For instance, we had now this first, let's say, this first Roma opera, contemporary Roma opera, which was performed under participation of young Romas from Cluj in the National Opera of Cluj. This is one example where we try to reach people having been reached for the time being by the high culture or the cultural activities. But once again, there could be done much, much more. But our limits are there, and I would like to do much more. Yes.
Right, and but also, Joachim, when you are speaking about inclusion, you include in this. I mean, EUNIC is the HEI is including in this also the inclusion of those levels of audiences and of public that are not yet sufficiently engaged and committed to participate in arts and culture.
Yes, for sure. Once again, we have this workshop with Roma women done by Alina Shaban, for instance, in the framework of a European program. We try also to get young people by things like having a nice party, having cultural activities connected to come together to things like this. Of course, this is the most important thing, to reach these different audiences.
Right. Okay, Julien, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you asked a very important question about center and periphery, which is a permanent question that we all at different levels are asking ourselves, how to reach out to people, because we believe in what we do. We believe that culture is a link between people, has a role to play in a world when values, common values are under attacks, when the war is coming back on the European soil, and this disillusion of, or delusion of the European Union that believed that it was the end of war, it's not. And also what you said, Corina, is democracy a permanent state of being together politically, or can it be broken? And what culture as a whole concept can play as a role to make this not happen if we believe that democracy is important? I think that we are seeing now that we are restricted by populism, by dismiss in these European values of diversity, which is, again, I was reading this at the beginning of our conversation, the description of action, the general description, which is diversity. If we don't put in the center those cultural values of your diversity, freedom of press, human rights, and also, as Joachim said, minorities, which makes a lot of sense in Romania, because I think that despite everything and criticism and everything, I think that Romania has a very interesting way to deal with minorities, and that it is very interesting for the other countries like mine, like France, to have a look on this way of treating minorities and involving them in the general system. So values, very important, of course. This is maybe, I was not speaking about that, this may be the utmost basic legacy that can remain in the cities. This is really to embody those values that can make our democracy, European democracy, stronger. And maybe also to link to what I was saying about the psychological legacy of European capital, I would have also a question to Oana more generally. Do you think, as a stakeholder, because you are a stakeholder, but do you think as a stakeholder that after this capital, people are more ready? I mean, yet already people, generally speaking, inhabitants of Timisoara, to work together on culture. Do you think that people that went to events that saw the positive agitation of what is capital city are thinking, we don't have to do that, we want to more participate? Or do you think it's something that it's not really happening? And I say that because there is a narrative that emerged from a capital city, and this narrative has to be shared. That's why I mentioned participation. It's why, as you said, Corina, there is center and periphery. I think that it will be said by my team in Timisoara, by Tilla, later maybe on the video, but it is a core of a project that we have within the legacy and we had before with the city of Timisoara called 𝗵𝗵𝗀𝗋, and that is going on in Traian neighborhood, which is in a neighborhood which is not central. And that was for us super important to be able to work on the long term in a neighborhood which is not a central neighborhood. But anyway, for us, and as Joachim said, EUNIC, so the European institutes or cultural sections of the embassy is to support this internationalization of the work in Timisoara. I hope that it will increase the level of partnerships that the stakeholders, and that's another question to Oana, do you think there is a possibility of increase after the capital because of the visibility, because of the openness, to have more partnerships internationally, and of course on the European level? And we would be ready and happy to help that, of course, and to reach out to a European project, of course, that as we do already between us, but with broader possibilities. And I think to conclude that in this struggle that we have to, on every person level, every stakeholder level, to make right now against this fragility of democracy, against the attacks that our values, which are not about consent or not consent, but the very core and the very values of what bring us together as European. So the work that we have to do, there is comparative advantages of the different stakeholders. And I'm very, very convinced that Timisoara has a very rooted model of living together, which is absolutely of utmost importance, and that should continue to be advertised as a comparative advantage of Timisoara in all this constellation, and to speak out, but also to prove by acts that this model is a model that can help not only people from Timisoara, from Romania, but people from whole Europe to strengthen democracy and the value that goes with it.
Thank you. So, Oana, you have to answer both Joachim's and Julien's questions before I ask you all a last question, because as always, time is running fast. So it's always this is a challenge for each of the salons that I'm doing. So, Oana, answer please what Joachim and Julien asked you. It's interesting indeed.
Yes, so I'm an optimist. So first of all, of course, I see the pain also, but I put my light towards the improvements. So I can see that I saw a lot of improvement during the last year in terms of opening perspectives through culture to different audiences. I think we went from one step to another. As I also said before, I think this is something that needs to become a commitment through public policies, and of course through the commitment of all of us, the stakeholders in the city, in order for us to be able to really improve our reality and to work better with all these European values that we were all referring to throughout this meeting. I think when we talk about strategic alliances, of course, this needs to happen at both local and European international level. In Timisoara, we have never been alone. We always work with others, learning from each other, which I think it's a fantastic quality of this place. And I have no doubt that this quality will continue to flourish in the upcoming years. So from this perspective, the existence of 𝗬𝗓𝗓, your interest in being by our side in the next year, in helping us to grow at a European level, to develop our lines of content, because this is the path that follows, developing together lines of content, not so much about polishing separate stones. It's more a bit of a composition of building a voice at a European level, of course. So yeah, I'm quite optimistic that we will be able to accomplish this here after the experience of 2023. I think it gave us the tools for us to be able to build this in the upcoming years.
The tools and the awareness also, because it was much more,
yeah.
There's much more awareness precisely of what Julien was calling as sort of a model that is very unique, not only in Romania, but it's a unique, you have this experience of living together. And maybe, Oana, this is also one of the explanations why you have so many projects and not just one project like FITS or like TIF or like, you know, it's one of the explanations why Timișoara feels each of the groups, the creative groups, has to express itself, and during time it learned how to express itself. And we never mentioned here the university, the West University, Universitatea de Vest, and the importance of the intellectual kind of strength that Timișoara brings to the table, and the writers and critics and very important intellectual presence existing in Timișoara that also is less atomized than in other places. Now, I have a last question, which is both linked to cinema and to Europe. Cinema, not just because I'm coming now from the film festival, but because Timișoara is today the only city in Romania that really has a program, an intentional program of restoring the network of important art cinemas that used to exist in Romania before the fall of communism. I'm always giving this example. We used to have more than 360 art cinemas in the whole of the country, and by 2016, when I was minister, I discovered that only 16 cinemas at that time were still art cinemas. And from that moment on, through the action of giving back those spaces, those venues to the mairies in Romania, some of them took the advantage to restore the role, the mission of those buildings into turning them into art cinemas. And from this point of view, Timișoara is a champion, and it's also again a champion because of the European capital of culture. Now, my question is the following. Do you think that cinema, because today we are living in this visual world, and because cinema is a crucial and a key form of art regarding gaining audiences and transmitting values, in which way, for example, 𝗬𝗓𝗓 or members of EUNIC like the Goethe and the French Institute are ready to invest in an intentional way into helping these cinemas, new cinemas in Timișoara, to be programmed? And as far as Oana goes, do you, for example, in Timișoara today, as a follow-up and in view of these many cinemas, I think that you're going to have finally 9 places that are more or less going to be also art cinemas. Do you have a program in this respect? I mean, do you think already how is all this going to happen? And we want also to take this into account. Joachim?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Yes, you're completely right about this form of cultural heritage, which is very important in many perspectives, because also I think art house cinemas in, for instance, in Germany, at least, I don't know exactly about France, but the Germans are also in danger due to the Corona pandemic, less visitors, more streaming platforms. So it is very, very important to discover and to install a system that cinemas are like theaters, so to say. They are the places where society will also have to celebrate and to show their cultural heritage. This is, I think, very valuable, not only in this case for Romania, but it's also for Romania. So we have to think about it. This is part of our cultural heritage. And secondly, yes, this is very important. We have also a local branch in Timisoara, the Goethe, the German Romanian Culture Center. And for the first time last year, for instance, we had our German film festival, which is not happening normally at this, in the same way in other cities, took also place in Timisoara. And we want to have it next year at the same, in the same system. So some days before, some days later, to have also this German culture film festival in Timisoara. But I have to admit also, and this is not to be critical, but this is just a fact, that I would wish to be more approached by the keepers, so to the curators from the cinema in Timisoara. So I could imagine very good also to work with them together in a larger scale, let's say by organizing, just to give an example, a festival of one famous German filmmaker like Fassbinder and so on. I would love to. I would love to. But for the time being, they are staying, at least in what concerns our institution, a little bit too passive, I would say.
No, but that's why I asked the question also, Joachim, so that maybe sometimes, you know, you're so preoccupied of developing a new institution, and we very well know that in Romania sometimes the institutions are created, but then instead of before creating them thinking how they are going to be filled with content, we just create them and then we fill them with content. So maybe they don't get this idea that they could reach out for partners to offer content that can be extremely interesting. And this also is a resource. It's not just reaching out. It's also saying, hey, can you partner with us so that we do something together, both from the resources point of view. Thank you. So, Julien? Yeah.
Yes, about this, but I just wanted to come back a second, because I had written on my paper, and you said it a few seconds after, the role of the university in the legacy. Yeah? The university is for me exactly what you said, but also a guarantee of transversality, of including scientific level, and that's very important to make this multi-scale and crossing, etc. That's really important, and so it's a super central element of the continuation of working together, and the university has a very big role to play. About cinema. Of course, like Joachim, we have a tradition of having cinema. We have the Festival français since 28 years, and it's happening in 13, 14, 12, it depends of the year, cities in the country, over the country, and in Timisoara also, of course. We are very close to the project that see the arrival of cinemas in Timisoara, and I wish myself that it could be also shared with other cities in the country. Of course, the ambition of reopening so much cinemas is very big toward the audience, toward how to manage it. We have been supportive of the cinema studio, and we're happy that this year it will reopen. It will open, and we hope that the cinema studio would be this shared place of creativity, innovative cinema experimentation, sharing really a programmation and events and being able to really support the pertinence of the European cinema that we really love. You know that 𝗵𝗵𝘀𝗂𝗧𝗂 is still the first art cinema in Romania, and that's good.
In Bucarest, in Bucarest.
In Bucarest, yeah, but that's good. But we would like to, and we're happy to have the more competitions that we have on this level, because it will be good for everybody. But and we are part of Cinema Europa, and I know that it's also an important element for Timișoara, the network, I mean. But there is very specific and very basic elements. If you don't have a projectionist, a professional to project films, you cannot project films. So there is a basic needs of having people that can work in the cinemas that have to be fulfilled. Otherwise, it will not be a success, and it takes time. So this is also a challenge to tackle. And also, as Joachim said, we wish there is an openness, and I'm sure there will be, to work together, because and to enlarge the focus. If Timișoara on all the levels is a very nice ecosystem, and I'm sure it will continue to be, and it will work on this legacy. The challenge is also not to make, I will use a word which is too strong, but just to make it clear, the challenge for Timișoara for me is also not to make secession, you know. It's to work with the region, the cross-border, within the country, with Romania, and not to feel that the only way is to work in the Banat, but really to try to keep this openness and to keep the voice that needs to be heard in the country and in the cross-border region, with specific challenges, but very important for all of us, with Serbia, with Hungary. And I think this role of Timișoara as a legacy of ECOC is a very strong ambition. Continue to think big, and still, if challenges are too complicated, not try to keep it on the city level, but still make it a shared ambition and support the whole region, and we will be at our modest level always supporters of this ambition.
Yes, that's absolutely. But this is why I'm asking these questions. You see, I mean, I think always Salon Insula 42 are opportunities to, you know, say things that maybe you never think are not known, but basically this is important, and maybe the people who are going to listen to the Salon are going to take action from this point of view. Oana.
I think that, well, first of all, the cinema and the movie as a format, I think it will continue to be a very prolific format in which we keep telling stories and learning about humanity and also other fields. So from this perspective, I think it's fantastic to have such a big arsenal of buildings in which big programs can be developed. And I'm quite sure that this will have a good impact over gaining new audience and so forth. On the other hand, if I look at this with the glasses of an architect, I think that in this development, you can clearly see, let's say, the worst part of direct legislative impact on development of public cultural infrastructure, because I think there is at the same time such a pity that these buildings couldn't be more multifunctional and couldn't be transformed a bit in order for them to be able to host much more types of format, not just cinemas. Because I think their positions in the city is quite strategic. They are spread all over the city in living neighborhoods, central areas, so they're spread throughout. It could have been such a fantastic infrastructure for participation and for transmitting a large variety of cultural formats. So I think it's a bit bittersweet. I mean, it's a challenge that we also have to solve from this perspective, because it has been ossified into a very specific type of functional space, which will only give a possibility for this type of format to be properly developed and consumed in these spaces. I think this adds to the challenge of developing a really consistent program around the cinema and movies for Timișoara.
Well, as far as I know, but maybe I am wrong now, I think that at least 2 or 3 of them are supposed to be interdisciplinary. And also the studio cinema, I don't know, Julien, if I am right or not, but as far as I read the project when it was in a phase, in an intermediary phase, it also is supposed to host a part of laboratory and work in relation to art cinema. It's not just the space, the venue where you're projecting films.
Yeah, no, that's in the hands of the municipality, of course, but we would like to continue the conversation on this subject also, and we hope that there is a way to make it happen, as you say, that it's also the ecosystem of cinema and the industry and the technique and the innovation, the experimentation that can be tackled, and maybe studio can be a good space for that. But I don't want to, I mean, there is, you know, the preparatory project, there is a long time that passed, then there is a global vision of the cinema. So probably the discussion has to be very flexible, but those elements that you mentioned should be present as much as possible, because it's a marvelous occasion and it's a marvelous project to have so much cinemas that can reopen. So yes, we wish, but let's be flexible in everything and wishing for the most cooperation possible. But you know, the projects, if you don't have the adequate persons inside, I mean, not that there is not, but with the, I mean, the expertise that can be just running the cinemas on the technical level, it's very complicated, and we experience the same problem. But we know it exists. It's not something in Timișoara. It's a global thing, and if you share with other countries around, it's also happening. So there is those challenges to tackle before we go to other things. But of course, it will be part of the conversation, and we are very open to that.
Thank you. So indeed, there is also this issue of professional capacity building for really the management and technical part of having a cinema working, because it's not just about programming, it's not just about content, it's not just about interdisciplinarity, it's also about the very, very concrete way in which people have to know what they are doing, how they manage this kind of space, and what kind of competence is needed to logistical and technical and management wise, so that a place like this becomes an important hub in the city of Timișoara. Well, I'm afraid that because also Tilla has her 10 minutes after we end our conversation, I just want to thank you all and say that it showed again how rich this kind of conversation is about Timișoara, and we only pinpointed a very small number of things that could be done and have to be done, and subjects that are interesting. It's an open discussion. I just want to say that as we planned with Julien and Joachim, there will be a salon, not online, but really live in Timișoara, about the issue of cinemas, also in autumn, and we will announce it. And of course, Oana, you're all also going to be invited to take part in it, and hopefully you will come. Please receive my full thanks for this discussion, and we hope that those who look at us now are going to continue to hear also what Tilla has to say. I just want to mention that Tilla is going to speak in French. So it's a very intercultural experience that we have. Elle a bien raison.
Moi, je vais dire en roumain, iubim Timișoara, et donc we are very happy that we can have programs in this city as a European. It was really something great and innovative for us. And then the French-German cooperation outside is already great. But when we can do also open to this European cooperation, it's even better.
Thank you, Julien. Joachim, do you want to say a last word too?
No, I think Julien said everything. It's very, very great. I think maybe it's a kind of, how do you say, it's a kind of stereotype, but I think what is really important that often one consider that the French-German cooperation is a little bit in the heart of Europe, serving as a model for others. And at least we can say, we can state for Romania, it is fully the case. I speak very good French. My friends from the Institut Français speak very good German, and we are doing many things together, but always in this European perspective, never being only bilateral, but always open in a very larger sense to Romania, but also to the other European countries.
Indeed, and you both speak very good Romanian, which has to be mentioned because it's really rare. Well, I mean, don't be modest. Oana, I will let you the last word. Because if you want to say something as an architect or as a FABER director, or as someone who really lived through the cultural capital.
I would like to thank you all as an inhabitant of Timișoara for your love and interest in this city, for the opportunity of creating these kinds of conversation, not just today, but in the past years and also in the future. Thank you so much, and we are looking forward to keep building things together.
Thank you all, and let's listen to Tilla now. Bye.
Bonjour Tilla Rudel, la directrice de l'Institut français de Timișoara. On va
Bonjour Corina.
Bonjour. On va avoir l'occasion de parler sur deux sujets concernant la capitale culturelle européenne. La capitale culturelle de Timișoara, c'est fini, il n'y a pas longtemps. Mais vous étiez un des acteurs très importants de l'organisation d'un certain nombre d'événements et de l'animation et de la médiation entre très importants partenaires culturels sur place et à l'étranger. Alors, la première question que j'ai, Tilla, c'est comment est-ce que vous voyez aujourd'hui la vie culturelle de Timișoara étant modifiée par la présence de cette capitale culturelle européenne de l'année passée?
Sincèrement, je crois que oui. Elle a été modifiée en profondeur, à la fois par une programmation extrêmement riche qu'il y a eu en 2021, 2022, 2023, qui était un peu la montée en puissance depuis que Timișoara a eu le titre, en 2017, je crois. Tout ça a été en fait coupé par la pandémie. Et quand moi je suis arrivée à Timișoara en septembre 2020, tout était éteint, tout était mort. Et la première chose que la mairie a faite, c'était le nouveau maire qui venait d'être élu, 𝗏𝗏𝑒𝑚𝑒𝑚𝑒𝑒𝑒𝑚, c'était de créer un centre de projet pour remettre en route la machine. Ça, c'est une chose. Je ne vais pas redétailler la programmation qui était très riche, ni le fait que la France, via l'Institut français de Roumanie, nous étions les premiers partenaires de cette capitale européenne. Mais aujourd'hui, je vois qu'on est en 2024 et dès le début de l'année, le centre de projet a tout de suite lancé un appel à projet qui s'appelle Timișoara 2023 Legacy. C'est-à-dire qu'il savait très bien qu'il fallait continuer à programmer, avoir une programmation très ambitieuse, parce que sinon, tout allait retomber comme un soufflet. Et ça, comme un bon soufflet français au fromage. Et ça, ils l'ont très bien compris. Et ils l'ont fait. Et nous, dans la foulée de ce programme Legacy, on est évidemment aussi un partenaire. Et par exemple, si en 2023, la France a contribué aux deux grandes expositions majeures qui étaient 𝑤𝑤𝑤.𝑛𝑎𝑟𝑑𝐼𝑉 et Brancusi, cette année, nous avons décidé que nous allons exposer aussi des artistes, mais des artistes vivants, contemporains, émergents. Et en ce moment, d'ailleurs, avec le même partenaire important qui est 𝗏𝑟𝑡 nous avons une exposition de 𝗦𝗹़CE, qui est une artiste contemporaine française, qui a un atelier qui enseigne à l'École des Beaux-Arts, qui a eu le prix Marcel Duchamp et qui est aujourd'hui exposée à la garnison sur la place de la Liberté à Timișoara. Nous avons aussi en même temps, dans le quartier de Traian, de Fabrique, une très très belle exposition de photos avec un photographe contemporain, 𝗦𝐴𝑚𝑒𝑚, en faisant le lien avec la Roumanie, car il montre des photos qu'il a faites il y a 26 ans à Timișoara. Donc c'est un peu le passé et le présent qui se mélangent dans cette exposition. Donc, la mairie, le centre de projet a mis à disposition toute une série d'espaces aujourd'hui dans la ville de Timișoara, comme le palais Stefania, comme la garnison, c'est le ministère de la Culture, mais en tous les cas, le musée du tramway ou le centre de projet, il y a plein de lieux qui sont ouverts et que l'on peut gratuitement demander au centre de projet. Il y a le Bastion aussi, évidemment. La série des 3 bastions, qui sont des très très beaux lieux d'exposition. Donc, par exemple, dans l'univers, dans le domaine des arts visuels, il y a matière à continuer à faire des expositions, et tout cela n'existe que depuis la capitale. Donc, c'est vraiment un effet induit de la capitale.
Et est-ce que vous avez remarqué une modification concernant le public? C'est-à-dire que c'est vrai qu'au tout début, même au moment de l'ouverture de la capitale culturelle européenne, on a témoigné des événements très riches. L'ouverture a été extrêmement flamboyante d'un certain point de vue, mais en même temps, il y a eu des expositions pour rester dans le domaine des arts visuels, mais aussi il y a eu l'ouverture des cinémas, il y a eu plein de choses qui ont démarré grâce à la capitale. Est-ce que, de votre point de vue, Tilla, le public a suivi ce type d'évolution? Est-ce qu'il a changé lui-même du point de vue de la consommation culturelle, de la manière dont les gens viennent voir les événements? Est-ce que vous sentez ça par rapport à l'Institut français ou par rapport aux événements auxquels vous participez ou que vous lancez?
Je crois que par rapport à l'Institut, on a un public qui s'est fidélisé et qui vient. Quand on fait un vernissage d'une exposition, on a plus de monde qu'on avait avant. Enfin, j'ai pas de repères, de réels repères par rapport à avant la capitale, parce qu'avant la capitale, on était en fin de pandémie. Mais je crois que oui, il y a le public est habitué maintenant à plus consommer des événements culturels. D'ailleurs, à la fin de l'exposition de Brancusi, on m'a demandé, mais quelle est votre prochaine exposition? Est-ce que vous allez nous amener Picasso ou Monet? Donc ça, c'est vraiment un effet de consommation culturelle. Je crois aussi que les cinémas, les 2 cinémas qui ont ouvert, le cinéma TIMIș et le cinéma Victoria, ont une excellente programmation. On y contribue aussi partiellement avec notre banque de données de films qui s'appelle IF Cinéma, et à travers laquelle on peut donner gratuitement, permettre gratuitement des projections de films français, francophones ou africains. Et ça, on le fait en partenariat avec les 2 cinémas, TIMIș et Victoria. Et moi, j'ai souvent vu la salle pleine, souvent. Alors, pour ce qui est de la musique, c'est toujours plein, hein. Les festivals de jazz font toujours le plein,
Ouais.
les festivals de musique classique aussi. Donc, pour la musique... et le théâtre aussi. Le théâtre, là, il y a eu récemment le festival, je crois, du théâtre hongrois. Tous les spectacles étaient pleins.
D'accord. Et puis,
on
aussi,
sent vraiment un désir de continuer à consommer de la culture.
et de le faire de manière beaucoup plus, disons, continuelle que moi, je pense, avant avant l'existence de la capitale culturelle européenne, parce que le potentiel à Timișoara était toujours là. Mais c'est vrai que la capitale a fait preuve que la ville peut offrir aussi des espaces, c'est-à-dire que je pense qu'il y a ce point-là des espaces que le centre offre aujourd'hui au projet culturel, ça n'existait pas auparavant, et aussi le fait que finalement le public de Timișoara a commencé à voir aussi bien des expositions d'art contemporain que des expositions de grands maîtres, et que tout ce mélange finalement a permis une ouverture vers des publics très, très divers et très variés. Enfin, une dernière question. Timișoara est une des villes les plus multiculturelles de Roumanie. Et aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans un point très délicat de la coopération culturelle parce que nous parlons beaucoup de l'Europe, mais en même temps, on voit ce qui s'est passé en Europe concernant la dérive vers des mouvements extrémistes et vers des mentalités qui n'encouragent pas vraiment le dialogue, mais qui plutôt radicalisent des convictions qui ne sont pas ceux dont on a rêvé quand on a parlé du projet européen. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez que le rôle aujourd'hui de la coopération culturelle engendrée par des instituts comme l'Institut français, comme le Goethe, comme l'Institut tchèque, hongrois, pour encourager les communautés à revoir et à redécouvrir les valeurs européennes humanistes sur lesquelles est bâti finalement le projet européen. Comment est-ce que vous voyez ça aujourd'hui, Tilla? Parce que vous avez une très grande expérience internationale. Comment vous voyez le rôle de la coopération là-dessus?
Alors d'une part, je pense que le rôle de la coopération culturelle en général est très très important pour faire véhiculer le message des valeurs européennes humanistes. On le fait aussi à travers une institution comme EUNIC, comme ce qui a été créé ici à Timișoara, House of the European Institute, avec tout ce qui est organisé au travers de cette maison des instituts culturels européens, que ce soit des expositions, des débats, des rencontres. Donc c'est vraiment le lieu pour mettre en valeur ce message humaniste de tous les pays européens. Par exemple, on va avoir au mois de septembre une nuit de la philosophie ici à Timișoara, qu'on organise sur plusieurs lieux, dont House of European Institute. On aura quelques débats et rencontres là-bas. On va inviter aussi des philosophes allemands, autrichiens. Depuis 3 ans que la nuit de la philosophie existe ici à Timișoara, on invite régulièrement des philosophes serbes du pays d'à côté, de Novi Sad ou de Belgrade. Et on a également un mécanisme qui s'appelle Théâtroscope, qui permet de faire tourner dans tous les pays, dans 14 pays, je crois, des Balkans et de l'Europe du Sud et de l'Est, des spectacles en tournée. Donc, on a créé les moyens de faire passer ce message d'humanisme à travers la culture, à la fois à travers des projets conjoints de plusieurs pays européens, mais aussi des projets français qui circulent dans tous ces pays. Et c'est vrai que Timișoara est proche de la Hongrie, proche de la Serbie, proche aussi de l'Autriche. On est dans un... C'est pas pour rien que ça a été appelé 𝗦𝗹𝗪, hein. On est aussi un centre de l'Europe. On est plus près, quand on réfléchit, on est à 2 heures de Belgrade, 3 heures de Budapest, 5 heures de Vienne et à 9 heures de Bucarest. Donc vous voyez que Timișoara, quelque part, est plus près de l'ancien empire austro-hongrois que de l'Empire ottoman, on va dire, que de l'ancien Empire ottoman. Et je crois que c'est important.
Voilà, et comme les intellectuels de Timișoara, comme les intellectuels de Timișoara décrivent ça, c'est une frontière qui devient un centre. En effet, c'est quelque chose qui est à la frontière, mais en même temps, cette frontière-là qui est tellement riche, qui est une intersection des cultures, elle devient centre.
Et pour nous,
Et
c'est
pour
très
en
important.
finir ce très très court dialogue,
Juste, je voulais
oui,
juste rajouter que pour nous, justement,
oui,
le débat d'idées est très important et c'est pour ça qu'on a la nuit de la philosophie qui sera suivie d'un festival de lecture à voix haute. Donc, tout ce qui est littérature, débat d'idées, réflexion, c'est aujourd'hui très, très important pour la coopération culturelle franco-roumaine, en tous les cas. Et l'Institut
d'accord.
français
Donc,
de Roumanie, il joue un rôle important.
entretenir ce type de dialogue et faire passer ce type de valeurs par des contenus qui se mettent en dialogue et garder ça comme une sorte euh, de manière de garder toujours la tête ouverte et la pensée ouverte pour la diversité des idées des uns et des autres et ne pas entretenir que des pensées radicales et que des pensées complètement manichéistes. Hein. Ça, c'est effectivement un des rôles de la coopération culturelle. Et une dernière chose comme question concernant Timișoara, parce que vous avez découvert Timișoara, nous avons souvent parlé de ça, Tilla. Qu'est-ce qu'est la chose de votre point de vue qui est unique à Timișoara d'un point de vue culturel? Qu'est-ce que vous avez découvert comme une surprise et comme quelque chose d'unique à Timișoara?
Je pense que c'est le multiculturalisme qui m'a vraiment interpellée et le fait déjà que dans une petite ville qui fait moins de 400 000 habitants, il y a 3 théâtres nationaux, enfin un national et deux municipaux, mais il y a un théâtre allemand, un théâtre hongrois et un théâtre roumain. Les 3 théâtres ont chacun un festival où ils font venir des spectacles internationaux. Il y a 3 cinémas et bientôt 5 cinémas d'art et d'essai. Il y a énormément de librairies, il y a autant de librairies que de marchands de glace carrément. Les Timișoariens aiment la glace, on en consomme beaucoup ici, et ils aiment les livres. Et ça m'a beaucoup étonnée. Ils aiment aussi le spectacle à l'extérieur, tout ce qui est parade, cirque. Il y a beaucoup de spectacles. Alors, c'est peut-être pas typique à Timișoara, je ne sais pas, mais en tous les cas, ils aiment sortir, ils aiment consommer de la culture, ils aiment le café. Il y a un côté Vienne ici, hein. On est comme à
Oui,
Vienne, et beaucoup de gens sont dans les cafés. Alors, plus même qu'à Bucarest, j'ai remarqué. Il y a
oui,
vraiment une culture du café, une culture de la conversation. On aime beaucoup converser, discuter. Il y a beaucoup d'étudiants. Il y a énormément d'universités ici. Il y a des étudiants dans tous les domaines, beaucoup en sciences humaines d'ailleurs. Alors, il y a évidemment médecine vétérinaire et dentaire comme partout, mais il y a pas mal de sciences humaines. Il y a une proposition culturelle assez impressionnante, je trouve, ici. Beaucoup plus que
d'accord.
dans les villes voisines, hein. Je suis allée au festival Shakespeare à Craiova. Bon, pendant 10 jours à Craiova, il y a ce festival Shakespeare, mais je ne sais pas ce qu'il y a le reste de l'année. Ça n'a pas l'air d'être aussi vivant que Timișoara. La ville d'à côté, Arad, c'est pareil. On est vraiment. J'ai eu beaucoup de chance hein, d'atterrir à Timișoara, j'en suis très heureuse. Et il y a beaucoup de communautés. Il y a, les communautés cohabitent. Quand il y a un grand événement dans la communauté juive, il y a le métropolite qui est invité, tout le monde invite tout le monde cohabite avec tout le monde et c'est un sentiment très agréable et très rassurant. Et franchement, je me dis que partout l'extrême droite avance, je ne suis pas sûre qu'elle ait beaucoup avancé ici à Timișoara. Je ne connais pas les résultats exacts des élections européennes ici, mais je crois que le chiffre n'était pas très élevé.
Oui, c'est vrai, c'est juste. Et donc, il y a ce type de ville qui est premièrement connectif. C'est une ville où la connexion prime sur sur des logiques euh, plus collectives. C'est plutôt une ville éclectique, mais où cet éclectisme, il encourage une forme de cohabitation effectivement positive qui se reflète aussi dans la vie culturelle.
Et il y a
Merci,
aussi,
Tilla Rudel.
avant de me remercier, je voulais juste dire aussi, j'ai été très impressionnée par le rôle de l'Institut français à Timisoara, par l'importance qu'il avait. Qu'il avait, qu'il aura. On fait partie, on fait partie de la ville, quoi. On a un rôle à jouer dans la ville.
Oui, absolument, absolument. Mais aussi Timisoara a eu la chance d'avoir une directrice de l'Institut comme vous. Donc, je vais pas, on doit être modeste, mais la modestie, elle a ses limites aussi. Merci beaucoup, Tilla Rudel, et à très, très bientôt.
Merci, Corina Suteu. Merci.